Hello there, AP World students. Let's learn all about Unit 9, Globalization. Gonna talk about the world today, so let's check it out. Alright, so the first big concept is the globalized economy. Today, the world is not quite one big happy family, but it's definitely a happier family than it's ever been in all of world history. The majority of the world is a part of free market capitalism, and the average human is far more economically better off than ever before. Even communist China, that country today, it's a part of capitalism. Okay, they're just lying to you. And these world leaders are largely credited with creating this globalized free trade liberalization of the international community. Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, Deng Xiaoping, and Augusto Pinochet. And because of these people, all the countries highlighted in green are just huge participators in the international economy. Everything's being traded, everything's traveling around the world. It's great. And I think that the big opening up of the world economy really made so many countries far more better off than ever before. And the Soviet Union at first didn't participate in that. America's wealth went through the roof. The Soviet Union couldn't keep up. That's why they lost the Cold War. So, cool. All right, moving on. Now, what makes the world trade work? What makes us so connected with other countries? Well, there are these big major international organizations called supranational organizations, namely the World Trade Organization, the WTO, the North America Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, the European Union, EU, and I don't know what ASEAN stands for, but it's a whole bunch of Asian countries that united their economies together. They encourage cooperation between all countries to make more money and improve all economies. And I think in every case, maybe there's a couple countries where this isn't true, but in the last 50 years, their economies have maybe even doubled. Okay, the world is definitely a way better place. Far more far more involvement and interaction than ever before. The world is, of course, always getting closer and closer to free market capitalism, further and further away from communism and government-planned economies. I think we can show you, like, Venezuela today is an example of a country that tried to do a lot of the USSR strategies, and those strategies just aren't working out. In every country in the world, there are people that sort of advocate for more socialism and more communism, but I think world history is just giving you counterexamples against those thoughts. So, more trade. Yay! All right, another really cool concept today is the concept of knowledge economies. These are countries around the world today whose major involvement in the global economy isn't exactly harvesting materials out of their land. It isn't exactly like working in factories and building stuff. It's people creating new ideas, or it's people programming stuff on the internet. It's sort of like the value that they bring to the world is based on the knowledge people have, not their skills or not their resources. And three countries that are great examples of knowledge economies are the United States, Japan, and Finland. And look, with all three of these countries, it's not like every single person in the country is a computer programmer. But we're seeing more and more that this is kind of looking like what the future could be. I mean, the computer programming is always growing. Get a STEM job, kids. Anyway, so the USA has 7 out of the 10 best universities in the world. People from all over the world come to the USA. They come to places like Harvard down here to study really high-level stuff. Japanese car companies like Toyota and Nissan are the best-selling vehicles in the world. And Japan hardly ever builds any of those cars in their own country. They actually build, they have the factory in the United States, and they just have other people work in the United States. Actually, I think there's even factories in Mexico that build Japanese cars that are sold in the United States. That's how crazy involved the world economy is. Finland is ranked number 1 for education in the world, mostly due to their incredible student-teacher ratio of 1 teacher, 4 kids. I could deep dive into how amazing Finland is at education, but no, it's really, really good. Finland also is a major provider of technology for all of Europe. Finland is a great example, being like, hey, if you invest in education, your country has some pretty amazing benefits. So if only America would follow that path. All right, moving on. So, another cool concept in the modern world is the standardization of international shipping. This is called containerization. This idea was by this American guy in the 1940s who saw how whenever a ship sailed into a harbor, they would like take each box off one at a time, and every ship was like, it looked kind of different, and every box was a different size, and it made the whole process really inconvenient. And it used to take 2 weeks to unload a ship, and then it would take another 2 weeks to reload the ship with new stuff. And he was like, man, the world would be so much more efficient if rather than having all these different size boxes and these different size ships, if we just made it standard across the entire planet. And the other cool thing too is, what if rather than take out individual boxes, we just take out whole sections of the ship? We take out the container that all those boxes would normally be stored in. And yeah, he created the idea of containerization. The way I like to think about it is it's sort of like the Lego building blocks of international shipping, because all of these container crates are exactly the same shape and size, made of exactly the same materials, and they're all designed so that they kind of lock into place on trucks, on trains, and on cargo ships. And this strategy is the most amazing thing for world trade. Like, wow, if someone could just travel back in time to the era of like silver trading and be like, yo guys, use standardized containers whenever you trade with China, it would be really amazing. It would have made so many parts of world trade way faster and way more efficient. And so much so that in the year 2021, if you want to ship one of these 20-ton containers from China to the United States, it'll cost you about $1,000. So it's, and $1,000 is nothing when you talk about international trade, and especially when you talk about 20 tons of goods. So this whole free trade happening around the world makes it so that it doesn't really matter where your stuff is made. We can get it anywhere in the world for very cheap. So pretty amazing stuff. Good job, containerization. I'm a big fan. All right, moving on. All right, and then the other big concept with the modern world is so much of the global economy now isn't really based on individual policies from specific countries. Because, look, the United States, China, Russia, most of Europe, they all joined the World Trade Organization. So the World Trade Organization kind of sets all the rules and regulations for how world trade is supposed to be done. And look, Donald Trump and other people can talk a big game about, canceling trade with China or putting tariffs on steel, but ultimately it's not going to work. The global economy is super duper interconnected. And this economy of consumer goods is saying someone in China will build a product, and rather than sell it to, the United States government and kind of work through the United States, they'll sell it directly to a person in America, largely through the internet. Websites like Amazon and Alibaba. Like, you think if you research stuff on Amazon, you're like, oh, that's hanging out here in a warehouse in the United States. Not always. Sometimes when you place an order on Amazon.com, Amazon will translate that order into Mandarin Chinese and send it as an email to the foreman of a factory, and the foreman of the factory in China will be like, all right guys, make some more of this thing. And it's like, wow, like you're actually directly connecting to a factory, but Amazon doesn't make that super clear to you. But yeah, so these companies that specialize in online marketing, they just totally go around all the normal aspects of world trade. China's economy is also rising very fast. They continue to liberalize their economy. China continues to connect with the global economy. Chinese people are being exposed to all kinds of new products, new foods, new standard of living. And actually, look, if we talk about a huge rise in recent years, if you compare China in the 1980s to China in the year 2021, China's probably 5 or 10 times more wealthy. Like, it's incredible what's going on in that side of the world. Huge increase. And I think fairly soon, China will surpass the United States as being the wealthiest country in the world. So China's sort of going full circle back to where this this class's first unit originally was, where China was on top of the world, and now they're getting back there. But yeah, and this whole concept of made in China, because for so much of world history during and after World War II, America was the factory of the world. The United States built everything for everyone. But right around the 1980s to 2010, a lot of those American factories closed. They moved to China, and so now people in China are building the stuff for the whole world instead of the United States. All right, moving on. However, based on everything I just said, China is still a major factory country, but we are seeing a trend ever since the year 2011. So this is now super recent history that factories are actually starting to move out of China, and factories are being taken out of China, going to Bangladesh, Vietnam, or even Mexico and Brazil. And the reason why is because they're finding that you could have those factories there and pay workers even less. So factories are continuing to move around the world to find the cheapest, most efficient labor, and also to get a shipping container from Mexico to the United States wouldn't cost you $1,000. It would cost you maybe $200. So it's even more efficient when you get the factories closer. And yeah, so factories will continue to move around the world. And I predict that maybe in 30, 40, 50 years, factories will move out of Bangladesh, Vietnam, and Mexico, and factories will probably move to Africa. So that's Mr. Brown crystal balling the future, telling you what I think is going to happen. All right, moving on. So to kind of go along with the standardization of global shipping, there's also the standardization of international air travel. A lot of you probably don't know this, but English is the official language of the skies. Every single pilot of every international airplane on planet Earth is required to speak English. Every stewardess is required to speak English. Every international airport, it could have its main language as the primary language, but then subtitled every single sign in English. Why did we choose English to be the international language? Probably because of the military power of the United States, but I would argue even more importantly how Britain took over the world during the age of imperialism. They kind of had the largest cultural legacy in the world, and so their language is the one that the international community has officially adopted. Also kind of a crazy fact, in the world of 2021 today, there are about 8 billion people on planet Earth, and 2 billion people are actively studying and trying to learn English. So by just simply being fluent in this language, you have achieved a goal that 1/4 of the world would really love to achieve. Some other cool aspects too is that every airplane has interchangeable parts, and I know that, look, there's different companies that will make airplanes, but because they realize, like, oh hey, if my airplane is flying into an airport in China and there's some mechanical failure, I want to make sure when I land it on that airport in China that they have the proper equipment to replace that damaged part. So it's sort of like every international airport is also like a big airport repair station, because all airplanes use the exact same specifications of equipment to fix them, which is awesome. Also, the standardized passport system. Every single country in the world it can issue its citizens passports, and all passports look the same and are kind of designed in the same way. So it's just a very effective system to move people around the world quickly, efficiently, and effectively. So awesome. Big fan of international air travel. Give it a try sometime, kids. All right, also globalization. Yes, so this is kind of what the whole point of this unit's about. But this is a concept which means the merger of all the world culture into one single global identity. And more we're seeing that the globalized culture is the English language culture, and more we're seeing that it's kind of American culture. Okay, like, look, here's some Korean kids just excited to watch the next Avengers movie. Here's some Thai girls obsessing over Justin Bieber. Here's some African girls dancing to America songs. So all of these are examples of kind of like the rest of the world is sort of wanting to vibe with America. However, alternatively though, you could even argue that globalization is when Americans vibe with Asian culture. Okay, K-pop, anime, Bollywood movies. those are not uncommon in the United States. And so the United States is also adapting some aspects of other cultures too. I mean, here's Obama showing off his favorite anime. So get it, Barack. Yeah, so all of this is globalization, the merger of a common global culture, but it's largely American culture, I'll tell you that much. Okay, multinational corporations. So, this is sort of going off with what I said with like Amazon and Alibaba. Oh, look, see, I've referenced them twice. But these internet companies are acting outside of the scope of typical governments and borders. In a lot of ways, these multinational corporations are more powerful than governments. I think I read somewhere that Jeff Bezos currently could buy like 15 countries. A lot of them are like small island countries, but it's like, wow. And also our new digital revolution, it's sort of showing that like a lot of the traditional ways of thinking about world history, like, okay, who controls what space? Who planted their flag in this land? But the internet is a digital space. And the digital space is so much more difficult for governments and for laws to be applied to, especially because you on the internet can access a server that's based in China. So how can the United States control what's happening on a Chinese server computer? But yeah, so here's just a big old list of multinational companies. All of these are just totally represented all over the world. Nestle's a Swiss company. I learned that the other day when I was researching all this. And Mahindra is this Indian factory company that's really, really big. And I didn't learn about that. And look, TikTok. You got TikTok on AP World, kids. Get excited. Do a TikTok dance. Live your best life. All right, moving on. And, okay, so with this concept of globalization, I believe it is overall a really great thing. Okay, there are some negatives to globalization, however, because some groups don't want there to be a common global culture. Some groups see it as a threat to their current culture. So there are these anti-globalists who want their country to stay totally the same. They want to be as conservative as possible. Typically, they're small ethnic groups who, don't want their traditional values messed with. They also don't want unequal economies. There is some truth to the fact that the World Trade Organization and NAFTA and the EU kind of puts some countries on top and puts other countries on the bottom. I do believe that in 100 years or more, there will be more economic equality around the world. But at least for the foreseeable future, America is going to be way more economically better off than a place like Mexico, for example. I think Mexico will continue to grow. I think America will continue to grow. But people are upset that seems that some countries aren't getting a boost they need to kind of catch up with the rest of the world. So these protests, it's doubtful that they'll ever stop globalization. I know that's their goal, but it's something that's out there. Not everybody is a fan of having one united global economy and global culture. And let me tell you some examples of this. So in Africa, there are a lot of people there that make shoes. Okay, like here's some African people making shoes to be sold in Africa. There's this famous American company, I want to say it's called Tom's Shoes, and its whole sales pitch is like, hey, if you buy a pair of Tom's shoes, we'll give a pair of our shoes to an African kid for free. And a lot of people in America were like, wow, that's a great idea, give some African people free shoes. But then people in Africa were like, yo, stop. We don't want your free shoes. We want to make shoes for our own people. We want a control aspect to our own economy. Stop giving us stuff for free. Let us build our economy our own way. Another aspect that's anti-globalization is the Chinese government hates it whenever someone in the United States speaks bad about China or insults China in some way. So China has put in a whole lot of effort and a whole lot of energy into creating this censorship on their internet. So they have banned YouTube, they've banned Facebook, and some of their programs like WeChat and TikTok have these special filters on them, and the Chinese government kind of controls what is accessible on those websites. The other thing is Arab treatment of LGBTQ plus people. Here's, a picture of two Arab dudes making out. Okay, so they're doing their thing. But the Arab world would absolutely hate it if you published a picture like this in a place like, I don't know, Tehran or in Mecca. People wouldn't be people would be upset because they see that as a affront to their traditional values. But I say, bring it on, LGBTQ plus people. Live your best lives. All right, moving on. So to kind of go along with that last point, civil rights have been advancing around the world greatly over the last 50 years. All these new ways of having people express themselves and having a more open, more liberalized world, it's definitely letting people be more comfortable, and it's especially helping women. More than any time in the history of the world, women are approaching equality to men everywhere in the world. I mean, there's some countries that are worse than others, and there's some countries that are far better than others. But things are looking good. They're going in the right direction. People are getting included in education and in business world. There's still a lot of progress that can be made, especially in the Arab world. I think this chart shows it pretty well, that by so many standards, the Arab world has the least attention given to women's issues. Sub-Saharan Africa is in second place, but surprisingly, South Asia, great. You're doing good with helping the ladies out. So more women go to college than men in the United States today. I think that's a pretty incredible statistic, and it's showing you that over time, women should overtake men, or you match men with our same levels of business involvement and educational involvement in society in general. And we got a female vice president, so it's all happening. It's happening right now. All right, moving on. Okay, so more with civil rights issues. There were two countries, the United States and South Africa, that had some pretty terrible segregation and pretty terrible racial laws. Here, these are pictures of the apartheid system in South Africa, where black people and white people were to live in basically separate worlds. Here's a bunch of white South African women saying it's wrong for people to race mix. Famously, the host of The Daily Show, Trevor Noah, his birth was an illegal crime in the country of South Africa because his mother was white and his father was black, and they said that's against the law. This child shouldn't exist. Kind of rude. The apartheid system was eventually overturned by this guy, Nelson Mandela, in the 1990s. And today, South Africa has no more apartheid, and it's doing everything it can to have a more equal society among the racial groups. We had kind of a similar system in the southern United States with segregation. I know even the city of Las Vegas, Nevada, had segregated casinos during the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. African Americans were not allowed to gamble in casinos on the Vegas Strip. But due largely to the work of Martin Luther King Jr. and the Civil Rights Movement, finally all of these laws were overturned, and America no longer has any of this racial garbage in our legal system. So we're doing everything we can to get a better, more equal world. All right. Okay, and what else is going on in kind of the realm of civil rights? So liberation theology is a political movement that happened largely, in the 1950s, 60s, 70s in South America and Central America. And to understand this movement, it was a whole lot of priests and ministers talked to their practitioners on Sunday, and they said, hey, what are the big problems in Latin America? It's that we have terrible wealth inequality. There's some people who have all the money, some people have none of the money. We need to advocate to those people that have the money and ask them to spread it around. And this was during the Cold War, so a lot of people were like, uh-oh, this is communism, this is socialism, this is sharing wealth. But I think largely today it should just be remembered as people were trying to advocate for a more social, equitable outcome. And also in the realm of civil rights, ending India's caste system. Yes, the caste system that I talked about in probably one of my first lectures in the religion unit. finally came to a legal end in 1976. India made caste discrimination totally illegal. However, I get the sense that in India today, there's still a lot of social stigma about what caste you're in. That should say caste system. And still, it was so deeply ingrained in Indian society. People gotta get over it. But at least it's no longer legal to discriminate, which is a great thing. No more discrimination. All right, and I'll talk about this in the next series. So peace out.